that pushes on us the Great Commission, that pushes on us to be representatives of Jesus Christ wherever we are, to take heaven wherever we are. You see, wherever God is absent, hell is present. Even in your own life, if you're living through hell because you don't feel the presence of God, because you don't consult God, God isn't part of your life except for maybe an hour a week when you can find the time to get here on Sunday morning, because God isn't present, hell is, according to the definition. Whenever God is excluded, whenever God is forgotten, whenever God is trivialized, whenever God is ignored, whenever God is given lip service to by us, hell exists. And what are you going to do about it in your life? One of the great misconceptions about Jesus Christ, and one of the great misconceptions about the church, is that we're all about saving your soul and other people's soul from hell when you die. And that's not true. Jesus came to save your soul from hell right now. Yes? He came for right now. So don't put this off like, well, I'll get around to it one of these days, maybe on my deathbed. Okay? I've baptized people on their deathbed, folks. Not one of them gave any kind of indication like, hey, I'm glad I waited so long. Boy, I sure had a lot of fun in my previous 80 years. But thanks, Pastor, for coming by on my 80th some year while I'm laying here ready to die. Thank you for giving me peace and connecting me to God. It was a good thing. It was a blessed thing. But not one of those people said, yeah, I'm glad I put it off. No, instead, most of them regretted that they had spent so much of their productive years living in hell. And that's a fact. Living in hell with the absence of God. Jesus came to save us from hell right now. And to move us to have more heaven, to have more God, to have more of the presence of God right now. And, yeah, when you die. Yes. Now, I told you at the beginning the story of Shadrach and Benny. And I love that picture of the three men walking around and the fourth man, the appearance like a god. And that's not an actual photograph, just so you know. They didn't take a picture that day with Nebuchadnezzar. Did y'all get that? Y'all pay attention? Look, I'm the one getting ready to go on vacation. I need you guys to be tuned in, okay? I'm doing my best to be focused here today, but I'm ready to go. Anyway, not an actual picture, but I like that image. You know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's an amazing story of hope. And it's amazing. It's an amazing story about faith. And it's an amazing way to tell whether you're in hell or not. Seriously. As I looked at that this week and thought about it, prayed about it, and said, yep, this story is about giving us a clue how to tell whether you are really going through hell or not. Or whether you just are inconvenienced. Or whether you're just not getting your way. Or whether you just feel separated from God. See, it would seem that Shadrach and Benny, okay, for shorthand, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you say that 3 times fast. Anyway, it would seem that these 3 men were in hell. Fair enough? It would seem that this story is about what happens when you go through hell. Okay? No. You're missing the point. No, we could make a sermon out of that. That'd be nice, you know. But I think it's deeper than that. Yes, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, yes, they were challenged. They were powerless. And Nebuchadnezzar made them choose. You either choose worshiping me and the golden idol, or I'm going to throw you in the fiery furnace. And they refused to give in. And they were thrown in the fiery furnace, but they weren't in hell. They were not in hell. They were challenged, yes, just like we're challenged. Many people, we get challenged. We get challenged by life. We get challenged by our job. We get challenged by finances. We get challenged by people. We get challenged by personalities. Yes, am I hitting anybody here? Yes, we get challenged. And we get frustrated. Shadrach and Benny were challenged. Their faith was challenged, but they weren't in hell. That wasn't hell. Okay? It was challenging. They weren't in hell. They were uncomfortable. And we understand about being uncomfortable, right? Shadrach and Benny were uncomfortable as they got nearer and nearer to the furnace. They thought they were in Iowa in July, you know? Like last week. They thought they were in Wrigley Field. Woo! Right? Nobody got that. Nobody got that. It was 100 degrees the day we were there. It's not about the Cubs. It was about the top. It was still a better day. You know, the worst day at the ballpark is better than the best day in the office. Amen? Yeah. was great, but they were uncomfortable. Yes. Just like we get uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable with some people. We're uncomfortable with what the preacher preaches to us sometimes. We're uncomfortable with things going on at work or in our home, in our family. We may be uncomfortable being challenged by somebody that says that maybe the faith that you had when you were in 6th grade should have matured by now. If you're 30 years old, it should be different. You should be growing, more mature and growing in how you understand Jesus. Maybe that makes you uncomfortable. Shadrach and Abednego were uncomfortable, but they weren't in hell. Let's get it. They weren't in hell because God never left them. Do you get that point? Hell is the absence of God. The powerful thing about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that God never left them. Can you say it with me? God never left them. Get that. Because no matter how uncomfortable and how challenging life can be sometimes, folks, it's up to us about whether we bring God into that situation or not. Now, maybe that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe you think that God being with you and blessing you is just your birthright because you were born in America, right? And have a certain last name. And I say that the gospel of Jesus Christ says the difference on whether you are in hell or not is up to you. It's up to you. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't leave God. They didn't leave God. They didn't give up their faith. They didn't give up their faith even though it looked pretty grim. Who wants to be thrown into a fiery furnace? Who wants to be tied up? But God was with them. There may be times in your life that you feel like God has left you. And we don't talk about that a lot in the church, but we should. There may be times when we feel that God has left us and that we're going through hell. Which again, definition, if God is not present, hell is. Maybe you're in pain. Maybe you're heartache. Maybe, again, you're challenged. Maybe you're uncomfortable. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you feel like you don't know what's going on, out of control. Maybe you have disease, whatever. There are times when we feel like God is not there. And that's real. And that's hell. So 2 things I want you to consider. 2 things about that. 1, if you're going through hell, call upon God. Don't leave God. God won't leave you. Call upon God and call out to God, listening for God. Now listen, this is really important. God may not answer your prayers exactly as you want. Do you all hear me, brothers and sisters? God may not answer your prayers exactly as you want, but that doesn't mean that God is absent. So don't go there. Wasn't it the prophet Mick Jagger that said, you can't always get what you want, but you do get what you need. Just because God is not answering your prayers doesn't mean that God is absent. So if you feel like you're in hell, call out to God, call out to God, call upon God. Pray, God, be present, and make yourself receptive. Put yourself in positions to hear God and to see God. Really, I'm being as practical as I can right now. If you feel like you're going through hell, do your best to open yourself for God's presence to be known and felt, because God is there. It's up to you about feeling and experiencing God. If you're going through hell, you think you're living through hell, call out to God. The other thing I'd give you to consider is this. For those times when we feel like God has left us, those times when we feel like life is hell, maybe we should take a moment and back up and look in the mirror and say this to ourselves. Ask this: have I left God? Have I given up on God? Have I left God? Have I left God out of my decisions as I'm praying about a new job or praying about my finances or thinking about, worrying about, I should say, when I'm worrying about those things, when I'm laying awake at night in bed in the dark of the night, am I really leaving God out of things? Because I'm laying there worrying about money, relationships, jobs, sin. The question is, if you're going through hell, have you left God out of it? Have you left the teachings and the ways of Jesus out of it? That's the question. If God is really not included in your life beyond an hour on Sunday, if God really is not included in your living, and God's absent, and you may be living in hell. And so I end this morning. Okay, let's bring it down a little more. I end this morning with this good news. What can you do this week? Will bring you more heaven. Wherever you are, whatever's going on in your life, maybe you're not in hell. Good. What can you do this week to bring more heaven into someone else's life then? What can you do to share heaven? Wherever you are today, I invite you and I encourage you to pray for more heaven in your life. I really do. I invite you and I encourage you to pray for the power of God to come into your home, into your head, into your heart, the 3 H's, head, heart, and home. I invite you to pray for the kingdom of heaven to be known or more known to you. And I invite you to start practicing right now. Let's pray.